Hey guys, Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. I am the president and owner of the Maxfield Report, and this is your market recap for the week ending September the 20th. The big news in the United States this week, the United States Hide, Skin, and Leather Association gathered in Chicago Thursday and Friday. The event was also attended by the members of the LIA, the Leather Industry of America, and the thing that's noticeable about this is the third year in a row they have held their convention jointly. And as of January 1, the two organizations will be morphing into one organization, which I think is going to be a very positive spin for the United States hide market and tanning industry as a group. So, a lot of very good attendance, a lot of interesting conversations about people's take on what has happened, what is happening, what they expect to be happening here in the future. So we'll have to see how this plays out. There's some presentation on traceability of hides in the United States and the industry moving towards that. So more on that later when we have it. As far as interest last week, bit of a mixed bag by the Packers. Some of the Packers opted not to offer, insisting they're still well sold, in spite of speculation by many people, including myself, that they may not possess the sold forward positions they're advertising. Other Packers had a very populated offer list. So as far as interest, really not a lot different than what we've seen the last few weeks. There is buyers interested in buying, but they're trying to target prices $2-3 under ask. Packers appears that they're willing to listen to bids as opposed to kicking them to the curb right away when they're down that much. But I think they were trying to target more, steady, maybe $1 off type business. Just really wasn't enough out there to claim it was a busy week of trading. And I think when the export report comes out next week, you're going to see that it was a pretty lackluster week of sales. As far as the cowhides go, offer list still very well populated. Asking prices unchanged. Shipping time very close in. Like the big Packer trade, not a lot of activity on these cows. People continue to try to bid it down. Begrudgingly, I think there's been some lower numbers traded on the cowhides because they have to get them sold, especially the branded cows, native cows. They're just a train wreck with a lot of those items unsold. So for the week, I don't believe it was a particularly busy week of trading, and prices were steady to incrementally lower. One thing to circle back real quick on the big Packer market is I think a lot of the Packers are taking advantage or trying to make happen is to liquidate any sales they have to China right now on the books. This is keeping offers very thin because the reason they want to ship these quickly is they want to get them to China before the proposed tariff increase here in December. So I look for Packers try to liquidate those entire sales. Any new business to China, you have tanners insisting they have to deliver by this time or else they want to take off the proposed increase in tariffs off of it. So something to keep in mind with the kill at 650 plus, limited offers, people not selling as much. I think come week of October 7th, because we'll be so close in, difficult to get hides to China. After that week, you're going to see a lot of hides being offered to the United States. So just a benchmark to put in the back of the head. As far as the harvest last week, we came back strong, 658,000. That compares 629 the week prior, 653 a year ago. For the year, 23,911 in total. And we are still about 225,000 above last year, or 1.1%. If you remember in previous video blogs, I have been telling I was looking for something maybe 1 to 1.5% higher by the time we get to the end of the year. So we're on target for that prediction. As far as the export report last week, actually a very surprising or pleasantly surprising report for those selling hides. Net sales of wet salted hides 466, shipments, which we just talked about, they're going pretty heavy. 526,000 on sales of wet blue, 142, and exports of 144. So the bright spot was that's one of the better numbers, both sales and shipments, we've seen in the last, say, month and a half. I think the reason for some of the larger sales numbers is due to the fact people were traveling before the fair, the week of the fair. They just got reported on this report. That's why I think next week when we see this report roll out, it'll be similar to the previous 5 weeks than what we're seeing on this last report. Real quick, I'll go around the world. Europe, looks like producers are digging in their heels. They're not wanting to accept any lower trading levels. In fact, there's some, rumblings of maybe even a little bit incrementally higher prices on bulls. Ox heifers seem as if they're holding their own. The big news there is the strike by the farmers that in Ireland that is reducing their harvest quite a bit. Right now, 3 weeks total in, they're down about 60,000 head as far as where they would be on a normal harvest. So also people keeping an eye on Brexit, or whether it'll be a hard Brexit or not, because that is worth keeping an eye on, because that will have some impact on the market, especially if it is a hard Brexit. Down in Brazil, really not a lot of change. There's some chatter that some of these guys at the fair were able to sell some wet blue hides. Obviously, they weren't getting any up money. A lot of chatter about 40-cent range. Some people insist they got as much as 45 cents for TR1s. But the long and short of it is they still have plenty of hides for sale down there, and trying to get something that will result in a positive return on less than a TR1 still remains a very difficult challenge. Australia. The drought-like conditions in the north are keeping plenty of plenty of cattle coming to market, larger than normal harvest numbers as they're starting to roll into their springtime. That is leading to thoughts that once we get through this year, the number of cattle will tighten up down there coming 2020. But for right now, prices, for the most part, steady. Lower grades, they're facing the pressure like the rest of us are. Just can't get out from underneath the lower grades. There's just not enough demand. And most will try to tell you that, trading levels are steady, but I think there is some, trading behind the curtains, likely at lower prices. So as far as our thoughts for this coming week, I still think you're going to see packers, as I mentioned earlier, continue to try to ship and liquidate all of their outstanding contracts to China. Offer list, if anything, I think there'll be more offers than the week prior. It'll be interesting to see if packers want to lower their asking prices, because it's evident they have not sold enough hides in the last couple of months. So I think there's a better chance the market, if there is a change, goes lower as opposed to higher. On cows, same thing. And it's getting difficult to stay ahead of this cow deal. So that's it for this week. If you're interested in any of my reports, go to my website, www.themaxfieldreport.com. I offer free 14-day trials. Take a peek at that, no obligation. And until next week, we will see you then. Ken Maxfield, I'm out.